On the evening I turned 32, my parents didn't bring out candles. They brought out an audience. Nearly 100 relatives filled the dining room, seated in careful rows like they were waiting for a presentation to begin. Crystal glasses caught the chandelier light. Silverware lay perfectly aligned. Everything looked expensive, rehearsed, and intentional. I noticed it the moment I stepped inside, still wearing my work jacket, my laptop bag slung over one shoulder. Something was wrong. My name is Amanda, and for most of my life, I've been the person who sensed tension before anyone admitted it existed. I learned early that in my family, nothing happened by accident. From the outside, we were admired. Large house, private driveway, holiday gatherings that looked magazine-ready. People said we were lucky. People said we were close. Inside, we ran on rules no one ever explained out loud. My father, Richard, believed money was the clearest measure of value. My mother, Elaine, believed silence was the same as harmony. And my younger sister, Lena, learned that attention could be earned, and once earned, protected. I was neither loud nor delicate. I didn't demand space. I filled gaps. When something broke, I fixed it. When finances got messy, I organized them. When no one wanted responsibility, it landed on me. I didn't complain. I thought that was loyalty. The walls told a different story. Lena's photos were everywhere. Graduations, vacations, smiling milestones framed in gold. My pictures appeared less often, tucked into corners, easily replaced. I noticed. I just told myself it didn't matter. I had my own life, my own job, my own apartment. Independence felt like security. That night, I told myself the same thing. Just a birthday dinner, I whispered internally as I took my seat. Don't overthink it. My mother barely glanced at me as I arrived. She was busy adjusting the table setting. My father worked the room, laughing, shaking hands, performing generosity. Lena stood near the center, relaxed and glowing, as if the evening belonged to her. Dinner began flawlessly. Plates arrived in unison. Wine appeared before anyone asked. Conversations overlapped just enough to sound warm without becoming personal. I smiled when someone looked my way. I nodded when an aunt complimented the food. Still, that low unease stayed with me, humming beneath the table. Halfway through the meal, my mother stood. She didn't tap her glass. She didn't make a speech. She walked to the wall behind me. Frames hung there in a perfect grid. Family trips, holidays, celebrations. Without a word, she reached up and removed one photo. Mine. I was 16 in the picture, sunburned and laughing at something outside the frame. The sound of the frame sliding off the wall was soft, almost polite. She placed it face down on the sideboard and returned to her seat. No one reacted. That silence was louder than anything she could have said. My father cleared his throat, and the room obeyed. "Amanda," he said, smiling like he was about to do me a favor. He slid a leather folder across the table toward me. It landed with weight. "We've been meaning to have this conversation." I opened it slowly. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Itemized, organized, clinical. Every expense neatly listed and totaled into one final number. Just under $250,000. "That's the cost of raising you," he said evenly. "Education, housing, food, everything." Someone laughed awkwardly. I didn't look to see who. "This isn't punishment," he continued. "It's responsibility. You're an adult. Adults settle their debts." I looked around the table. My mother stared at her plate. Lena looked bored. No one looked surprised. "If you're unable to repay it," my father added calmly, "then we should take some distance. No contact until it's resolved." That's when I understood. This wasn't about money. It wasn't even about control. It was about erasing me, while pretending it was reasonable. Turning love into a balance sheet. Turning my existence into an expense they regretted. My hands were steady when I closed the folder. My chest wasn't. Before I could speak, Lena leaned forward. She didn't rush. She never does. Her fingers brushed against something metallic on the table, and the soft clink echoed through the room. My car keys. She lifted them, letting them dangle casually from one finger. "Dad transferred the title this morning," she said lightly. "You weren't really using it the way the family intended?" That car wasn't luxury, it wasn't impressive, it was simply mine, or so I thought. I realized then how complete the setup was. Even my independence had been borrowed. My father gestured toward the far end of the room. "That brings us to the final matter." That's when I saw my manager standing near the doorway. Mark. He looked uncomfortable, hands clasped too tightly, eyes avoiding mine. I didn't know he'd be here. my mind said, though something deeper already knew the truth. Mark cleared his throat. Amanda, he said, voice strained. Based on concerns brought to my attention tonight, we're terminating your position effective immediately. No HR. No warning. No paperwork. Just a sentence delivered like dessert. The room stayed silent. They were waiting for tears, for begging, for justification. None came. I felt hollow for exactly 3 seconds. Then something settled in. Heavy, solid, unmistakably clear. I stood, pushed my chair in, and placed the folder into my bag like it was nothing more than mail. I looked at my father. He looked relieved. At my mother, she smoothed her napkin. At Lena, already victorious. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't defend myself. I didn't say goodbye. I walked out. Gravel crunched beneath my shoes as I crossed the driveway alone. No one followed. No one called my name. By the time I reached the street, the house behind me had already closed ranks. I didn't know where I was going. I only knew I wasn't going back. I didn't go somewhere dramatic after I left. No airport. No friend's couch. No crying in a parked car. I walked. 3 miles, maybe more. Past quiet houses glowing from the inside, past sprinklers ticking in perfect rhythm, past kitchens where people laughed over ordinary dinners. Every step drained the shock from my body until only something colder remained. By the time I reached my apartment, my feet hurt and my hands were steady. I didn't turn on the lights. I didn't need to. I dropped my bag on the chair, placed the leather folder on my desk, and opened my laptop. The screen flickered to life, that familiar black background and blinking cursor waiting patiently. This was the only place that still made sense. I work in cybersecurity. My job isn't revenge. It's pattern recognition. Finding what doesn't belong. Following trails people assume no one will ever connect. And my family had always been careless with trails. I started with things I already had permission to access. Old financial records I'd helped organize over the years. Temporary payments I'd covered when my father blamed timing issues. Transfers I'd never questioned because trust had always seemed cheaper than doubt. The system didn't lie. Within an hour, a pattern emerged. Regular transfers. Clean amounts. Monthly deposits from relatives who believed they were investing in something stable. Something managed by my father because he understood money. I recognized every name. My uncle. My aunt. People who mailed birthday cards with handwritten notes. The money didn't stay where it was supposed to. It paused briefly, then moved again. Out. Always out. Into expenses that had nothing to do with investments. Luxury rentals, travel, designer purchases. A lifestyle. Lena's lifestyle. My stomach didn't drop, it hardened. This wasn't favoritism. This wasn't emotional negligence. This was misuse, intentional, repeated. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. The room felt too quiet, like it was holding its breath. My phone buzzed on the desk. Then again. I didn't check it. I already knew who it was. I kept working. I didn't break into anything. I didn't access data illegally. I only organized what already existed. Aligned timelines, matched amounts, labeled transactions by what they actually were instead of what they were called. By the time dawn light slid through the blinds, the story was complete. And it was ugly. I saved everything, backed it up twice, then finally checked my phone. Missed calls filled the screen. Messages stacked on top of each other. My mother, my father, Lena, then Mark. His message was short, panicked. He said there'd been a misunderstanding, that he'd been pressured, that maybe we could talk. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my contacts and found a number I hoped I'd never need. The regional director, the woman who approved my last project, the one who stayed calm during a major breach while everyone else panicked. She answered on the second ring. Amanda, she said, it's late. I know, I replied. I won't take long. I was terminated tonight, not through HR, not formally. It happened at a private family event. Silence. And my manager acted on personal information supplied by my parents without verification. The silence changed texture. Give me 5 minutes, she said. I made coffee while I waited. Black, bitter, familiar. 4 minutes later, an email arrived. Access restored, termination reversed. Another followed, formal, precise. Mark was being placed on administrative leave pending review. I was instructed to take the rest of the week off and return the following Monday. 1 pillar down. My phone rang again. This time I answered. My father's voice was tight. You need to fix this. I didn't break anything, I said calmly. I organized it. You sent something, he snapped. People are asking questions. I shared accurate information, I replied. You have no idea what you've done. I do, I said. I finally do. He showed up that afternoon. Not the polished man from the dinner, just a tired one standing too close to my door. We did this for the family, he said quickly. For stability. For legacy. You invoiced me, I replied, in front of everyone. That was a lesson. You used other people's money, I said, and blamed me for existing. His eyes flicked away. Behind him, Lena stood near the stairs. No glow, no confidence, just fear she couldn't quite hide. This doesn't have to go further, my father said. We can fix it. Not for me, I said. For them. My phone rang again. It was my uncle. He didn't accuse me. He didn't yell. He thanked me. You didn't destroy the family, he said quietly. You showed us where it was already broken. My father heard it. His shoulders slumped like something inside him finally gave way. Please, he said, just stop. You taught me actions have costs, I said. This one is yours. I closed the door. The fallout began quietly. Accounts froze. Questions multiplied. Conversations happened without me present. Lena's life unraveled fast once the money stopped. Trips vanished. Invitations dried up. People who orbited her found new centers of gravity. She called, texted, then went silent. My mother sent one message. I hope you're happy. I didn't reply. At work, things settled into a new normal. Same desk, same screen, less weight in my chest. For the first time, I wasn't fixing their mess. I was finished. The consequences didn't arrive loudly. There were no police lights, no headlines, no dramatic confrontations where everyone finally said what they'd been holding in for years. What happened instead was quieter and far more permanent. Money stopped moving. That alone changed everything. My uncle and aunt took control of their finances. The automatic transfers ended. Questions were asked, first gently, then more firmly. Documents were reviewed, explanations were requested, and found lacking. The house that once felt untouchable began to feel temporary. Decisions were made without my parents at the center of them. That shift was subtle but devastating. Influence, I learned, only works when people believe in it. Once belief is gone, authority becomes noise. Lena was the first to disappear. Not physically, socially. The trips stopped. The luxury purchases vanished. Invitations slowed, then stopped entirely. People who once hovered around her like gravity had reversed course, drawn elsewhere. She took a job she'd once laughed about, something she used to call a placeholder for people without options. I didn't celebrate it. I just noticed the silence where entitlement used to live. My father called less and less. When he did, his voice was different. Smaller, no speeches, no lectures, just fragments of regret he never shaped into an apology. He talked about stress, about misunderstandings, about how things had gotten out of hand. He never talked about the invoice. My mother sent one more message weeks later. Maybe someday we can talk. I read it once, then again, then set the phone down. Not out of anger, out of clarity. At work, everything stabilized. My access remained open. Projects moved forward. Colleagues treated me exactly the same as before, which turned out to be a relief I hadn't known to ask for. I took the day off I'd been instructed to take. I slept. I cooked. I let the quiet be quiet. 4 days after the dinner, my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Calls stacked up, voicemails I didn't listen to. I turned the phone face down on the table and watched it buzz itself tired. That's when I understood what had really changed. They no longer controlled the narrative. They no longer controlled me. I hadn't been disowned. I had been released. A week later, I sat at my desk at work, coffee cooling beside my keyboard. Same chair, same screen. But something in my chest felt lighter, cleaner, like a room that had finally been cleared out after years of clutter. I opened my laptop and deleted the folder. Not because it wasn't important anymore, but because I didn't need to carry it. For most of my life, I'd been the system manager for my family, fixing what broke, covering what failed, absorbing what no one wanted to deal with. I'd mistaken responsibility for love, silence for peace, endurance for loyalty. I was done. The final conversations happened without me. Legal matters resolved themselves. Money was accounted for. The story closed its own loops. Lena never apologized. She didn't need to. Her silence said enough. My father tried once more, months later. He asked if we could start fresh. He spoke carefully, like someone negotiating unfamiliar ground. I told him the truth. You taught me that everything has a cost, I said. This is the price of how you treated me. He didn't argue. My mother never called again. And that was okay. Because here's what I learned, and what I want you to hear if this story feels familiar. Family is not the place where you are priced, audited, or threatened into obedience. Love does not come with invoices. And silence, when it's chosen, not imposed, can be stronger than any argument. Walking away didn't make me heartless. It made me free. For the first time in my life, the space around me belonged to me. My time, my work, my peace. I didn't owe anyone proof of my worth. I didn't need to justify my existence. I stopped fixing systems that were designed to fail. If you're listening to this and wondering whether choosing yourself makes you selfish, it doesn't. It makes you honest. And honesty, I've learned, is something fragile systems can't survive. If this story hit close to home, if you've ever had to protect your future from the people who were supposed to protect you, share your experience in the comments. Your voice matters more than you think. And if you want to hear more stories like this, stay with me. Some silences are the beginning, not the end.